I've said this countless times, it has not changed. I am a zoom lens guy. This is mainly because I'm a landscape photographer and I don't want to ever be caught out in the field, lacking a few millimeters in terms of zoom, in terms of zooming in or zooming out. But I do have a few preferences when it comes to prime lenses. And this video is going to be about that one prime lens that will really never ever leave my camera bag. Whenever I say that a certain camera bag is perfect for me, it's usually because it can carry my 3 zoom lenses, my Trinity, my ultra wide, standard zoom, and my telephoto. And I always say that there's a bonus room for one small prime lens. And this prime lens is that one that will never leave my camera bag. Now, I'm not really someone who doesn't shoot with prime lenses. In fact, I have quite a few. I have a 12mm for my interiors. I have a 15mm shift, which is technically still a prime lens, and I have a 50mm for everyday stuff. This particular prime lens is my go-to prime lens for video content, for vlogging, and also my prime lens of choice if ever I would be left with just one prime. This would be it. And of course, I'm talking about the Sony 20mm f1.8G. And yes, it is this small. Now, this isn't the first time that I have used the 20mm. Actually, when I first got the full frame camera back in the DSLR days, I had a 20mm f2.8. And this was mainly just a choice because I could not afford yet a better wide angle lens. And so since it's a 20mm, it's technically a super wide angle lens. It's something that I used quite a lot at the time for landscape photography. And it really is not my focal length of choice if I were to be left with one for landscape photography. However, I did fall in love with the perspective that it gives. Now that I shoot with Sony mirrorless cameras, well, I've already invested in a range of zoom lenses. However, this particular 20mm is actually something more attractive than the one I had before. Of course, that old one is technically just a 2.8 aperture 20mm lens, which is not too different from what you would get from, say, a 24-70 f2.8 or a 16-35 f2.8 back then. However, 20mm at f1.8, it opens up, literally and figuratively, a lot of possibilities. Now, this 20mm actually comes in quite an impressive form. It's very light. I'm not even gonna mention how much it weighs because it technically does not mean a thing. And it's only about 4 by 3 inches, something like that, which is really negligible whenever you're carrying it. It's not gonna take up so much space. And that additional weight is barely felt even in long treks or long walks, especially when you have your camera in your hand. This is actually one of those lenses that is versatile when it comes to usage, even if it's a fixed focal length lens. And it's really something that I would use for videos, I would use for vlogging, I would use for outdoor stuff. And the fact that I can also use this in Super 35 or crop mode, or maybe even with an APS-C camera, times the 1.5 crop factor, that's a 30mm lens, which is very close to my next favorite prime lens length, which is a 35. So I actually set this up with the A7 IV and I set up a custom button which turns on the Super 35 mode, and it goes from a 20 to a 30, and it's a perfect shift for me. Now, there's actually so much to love about this lens. Of course, it has an automatic and manual focus switch right here, a focus hold button right here, which basically comes with most Sony high-end lenses. And it actually also comes with an aperture ring right here to give you full control of the aperture on the lens. And more conveniently, if you're shooting videos, you can just turn off the click and just shift your aperture while you are shooting. And that's really a huge plus for videos, especially when you're into a lot of video transitions. However, I am not a videographer myself. I only really do videos like these and a few outdoors, and I rarely ever vlog. So I'm saying this because I would never really get a lens that I would not use for photo. And this is actually a really good photo lens as well. For one, at f1.8, I can really appreciate the background blur that it gives me, even if the subject is maybe a few feet away, 1 or 2 feet away. And I did test this out in the mountains recently, and I just really fell in love with the perspective, and I fell in love with the background blur that it gives me. However, when I do focus at distant things, even at f1.8 or for this example f2.2, it really still performs very well and it keeps the details very sharp. I always like testing lenses in foliage and just try and see how crisp it can get the details on the grass and on the leaves of the outdoors. And this one really just blew my mind. And I can really just see myself in such situations shooting with this lens in my hand, walking around, walking to a certain location, and just trying to find unique perspectives that I would want to capture in between the main landscape shoots before I bring out the bigger and bulkier zoom lenses that I have. And I did actually try this lens a year ago when it came out, and I really loved shooting outdoor urban scenes with it, just getting patterns and also structures and a few people in the shot and just coming up with a really good interaction of people in the urban setting. Now, I'm a landscape photographer. I don't ever shoot low light portraits, low light events, low light concerts, weddings, whatever. But I do like bigger aperture lenses for when I shoot landscapes at night. And that's really whenever I want to be shooting the night sky and getting some star trails or the Milky Way or anything really that can make my nighttime landscapes dynamic. And given that this lens actually has an opening of f1.8 compared to the f2.8 that I have in my other lenses, this one will give me the benefit of the ability to really lower my ISO and come up with even cleaner nighttime landscape shots. And take all of those together and just imagine the capabilities that a single lens can give you in various shooting scenarios. Now, if you have any questions, suggestions, or comments about this video, or maybe you have your own experiences with the Sony 20mm f1.8G, leave them down below in the comments and let's talk. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you are into photography, landscape photography, and all the tech around it. And of course, my name is Nicco Valenzuela. I'm a landscape and architectural photographer and Sony Philippines product expert. And thanks for watching.